Happy Hump Day. Welcome back to the Podcast Daily. It is a Wednesday. We are in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. It's a Woody Wednesday. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, and I am Austin Ward. And as teased by my esteemed colleague, it's time for some stonks. 1 week in.
Okay.
Up, down, holding. Where do you think we are? Birms can't go first anymore. He steals everyone's pick. Bill.
Malik Hartford.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, man.
No, I won't start there. Where do I want to start?
I bet you pick someone on the offensive line.
No, I will eventually, but I don't want to start with that. I think I will start with Tyrone Malone, who at times in the offseason when I have talked, me personally have talked about defensive tackle depth to be more specific, have just forgotten to mention him because I sometimes forget that he's on the roster because he joined after spring ball and it was kind of a weird timing there. But when you saw him out on the field on the first day of camp, he looked like he belonged immediately. I think sometimes when guys transfer and they're in that weird in-between period, especially in the spring where they don't have a home quite yet, they can let things slack a little bit, and I'm talking physically. And he did not seem to do that. He seemed to make sure everything was on point, so when he got here, he could hit the ground running. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I know he had some runway between when he got here and when we saw him for the first time. But I thought he looked really good just from a physical standpoint to practice. And then when he had to kind of step up from being down with the threes to being up more with the ones after Tyleik Williams got hurt, he didn't stand out in a way that made you think he didn't belong there. So I don't know what his role will look like in the fall just yet, but it is probably going to be more significant than I first gave him credit for when he arrived.
Good pick.
I'm going to say Joshua Fryer, who, after listening to some of the defensive linemen talk in here last Thursday after the first practice, they were very quick to point out where they had their success and who they were able to
I think we were able to tell where it was too.
And then when asked about going against Josh Fryer, the response was decidedly different and how much stronger he's gotten at the point of attack, how much better his footwork has gotten. And I think that Ohio State has a left tackle. And so I think that is pretty positive for the Buckeyes heading into this quarterback battle, which we're going to get to see, really the first real taste of on Friday. Mm-hmm. And then the Buckeyes will have their first scrimmage on Saturday. So Josh Fryer establishing himself as the left tackle at this point in camp, I think is pretty important, and I think he's done that. And again, I just like to tell people that I was the only one who thought Josh Fryer could do this.
You were the only one?
Yep.
Stock up on Berm.
That's
years ago.
That's not true.
I believed.
Well, that doesn't mean you were the only one.
Yeah. Me and Vinny Gelati, that was it.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well,
continuity.
Never go against the family.
That's true. You shouldn't. I think you could still scoop up some Jihad Carter at a pretty reasonable price, and that's despite Bill Landis' best efforts to pump it up throughout the offseason. He was still going to be the starter. So we'll let both of these guys just keep patting themselves on the back for their predictions.
I mean, predicting a guy who was a 3-year starter was going to start.
No, yeah, it was bold. It was bold.
Was not all that bold.
It was because I was, as I talked about on Tuesday in Snappy J's, I don't know, brainwashed, hypnotized by what I saw in those spring practices, which was Cam Martinez consistently ahead of Jihad Carter. But now, neither one of them are even in that first unit at the same position, and Jihad Carter has moved around and is playing in some of that deep safety role. I enjoyed talking to him about those three because everyone's like, "Oh, you're just really versatile and you can play every spot." And yeah, that's true, but one of them still has to best suit your skill set. And I think that there's maybe some awareness that the best of the three was not nickel, and the fact that Ohio State and Jihad Carter have come to some sort of, I don't know, agreement and accord about the best way forward works in everyone's best interest. That it's good, I think, for Perry Eliano and Jim Knowles. I would say stock up that they seem more willing to entertain other ideas, to find solutions at safety, and good for Jihad Carter that he could play all three. Now, it doesn't mean that he should, or that that's the best approach is to rotate them, like a spin cycle through all three positions. I don't think that does anybody any favors over the course of the year, but Jihad Carter is healthy. He appears pretty confident. He's had 7 months now to learn that system and hit the ground rolling a little bit here in training camp. And I think it bodes pretty well for him.
I think that's the issue, though. Like he was playing the same position that Cam was playing in the spring, and then he got hurt. It becomes difficult to figure out. Cam, by all accounts, was really, really good in the spring. So you don't want to say, okay, he's the starter, no doubt. And then you see the rotation of the lineups, and okay, now I can see where it fits, or because Cam is more natural in that slot than Jihad. And then now, again, to your point, like kudos to the staff for going, you know what, maybe let's move Sonny instead. Like that's a wise way of thinking.
Yeah.
Wisdom. Up. Stack up that wisdom.
And I don't think it's something that we've seen in a while here. So
wisdom.
I enjoy it.
How much like Trevion Henderson stock do you think is still available out there for me to scoop up?
Probably more than there should be.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. I feel like I'm getting it at a good time. It's a combination of the way that Ryan Day has talked about him in the preseason, Trevion's mood when we talked to him earlier or I guess last weekend, just like super confident and didn't seem to be like wearing the weight of last season on him in a way that maybe I thought he might be. He seems to have shed that quite well, and it was just like eager to get back onto the field and remind people how good he is. And obviously there's the health question there, like can he remain healthy and stay durable throughout the season? I tend to think that he has a better shot of doing that in a world where they're so deep at running back. Maybe they can spell him a little more than they have in the past. And if he's healthy, like I've wavered a little bit back and forth between he and mine, like who do I think should get the majority of the touches? Dallin Hayden is in that conversation too, but the more we hear about the running backs, the more we talk to the guys, seeing Trevion like cut and run the way we expect him to on the first day of camp makes me feel pretty bullish on the chances of him getting back to that form we saw early on in his freshman year. So I'm pretty excited for what he could do this year, and if there's anything left for me to scoop up, I would gladly do that.
Let me ask your opinion, because you were so often a year ago saying that you thought Mayan Williams was the best fit for the offense. Was that predicated on the fact that CJ Stroud was the quarterback and you needed to be able to mix it up between downfield passing and the power run game? Or was it because you just thought he was that much? Obviously, we know that there was a foot injury, but the foot injury either exacerbated the lack of vision or it was a result of the lack of vision. I don't know. Do you think that Trevion is a better fit for this offense with a unproven, inexperienced quarterback who maybe needs to throw the ball to the running back more or whatever? Because Trevion in 2021 had 30 catches or something like that, right?
30 targets, 23 catches.
And he had 6 targets or 6 catches a year ago, one of those two. So how much more valuable is he in an offense that requires the quarterback to utilize the running back in the passing game?
I feel like last year's offense should have done that more. Now, they scored a lot of points, but I think you're wasting a weapon if you don't do that. And Mayan Williams is pretty good out of the backfield as well. I mean, I don't think that anyone would say he's the most natural pass catcher, but all 5 of those guys can do that. Now, Trevion's explosiveness is what sets him apart. And I think maybe the reason that this has happened before, where I've said, well, I think Mike Weber's the better fit, because a lot of the downfield explosiveness in the Ohio State offense comes from the passing attack and scheming up that stuff and getting people open down the field and relying on the quarterback's arm. I think what you need most, or what I felt they needed most, was someone who would break tackles, make one decision in one cut, and go and move the chains. I don't think Ohio State needs someone to break a 70 or 80-yard touchdown run. Now, it'd be great if they did, and Trevion can do that, but a lot of that for me comes back to the variance between Trevion's runs when he is looking for, not using maybe the vision or looking for an extra hole to score, and Mayan Williams saying, you know what, this is where I'm supposed to go. They blocked it up for one-on-one. I'm going to get 5 yards and a first down, and the offense is going to keep rolling. I think that Trevion at times last year did absorb that message. Which game was it, Bill? Like, I don't know, maybe it was Penn State, where it was like he was trying so hard to prove that he was tough, and then he was just taking guys on, and it was to the detriment. It's not what he does best. I think some sort of merging of those ideas makes Trevion really good. I'm talking like, you got me onto something that I think is really important about this, and I could talk about it for another hour. I won't. But if Trevion is year 3 J.K. Dobbins, which I think he can be, then you get the best of all those worlds.
Yeah. This is a you thing, because I'm sure you'll dive into this probably and investigate it. I'm curious. A year ago,
he's saying I won't.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm curious from a Ohio State offense perspective. were they more successful on 3rd and 3 and below, or 3rd and 7 and below?
I don't know offhand exactly.
You know what I'm getting at?
But I would say they were probably more successful, like 3rd and medium, than they were 3rd and short.
And that I think goes to your point. Like a year ago, you're getting those first downs more often if it's Mayan Williams in the game and not Travion Henderson. So much to the point that if you felt more comfortable at 3rd and 8 because you were going to throw the ball and catch that first down than you were to get a 3rd and 2 in the running game. So, like, I wonder how much just the overall approach changes for Ohio State.
But I also think that is part of the way that Ryan Day got bogged down in the play calling last year, that he felt like every 3rd and 2 they had to run it, and it didn't match the identity of the team. It didn't match the skill set if Mayan Williams wasn't out there necessarily. And when Ryan Day and Ohio State has been at its best, on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 or 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2, he is willing to throw down the field, and take, put the game in the hands of his quarterback or his best players, and that's when they've stretched the field the most. And when that disappeared, that also put Travion Henderson in a tougher spot. Aside from the injury, it also put Mayan Williams in a spot where getting 2 and fighting for 3 became much more challenging. Like, all of this stuff is connected, and it doesn't mean that Travion was incapable of doing stuff at his best, or that Mayan Williams was a better back, or that anybody else. Like, all those things work together to slow down Ohio State and keep them from their peak operating capacity.
All this to say, stock up on Travion Henderson.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's what we've agreed to?
Yeah. Agreed.
I'm going to say stock up on Caden Curry, who we've not talked a lot about this offseason because there's been so much focus on every other part of the defense and how Jack Sawyer fits in at being back at a full-time defensive end position. The Buckeyes really only have 5 defensive ends, and I think Caden Curry is pretty clearly the 4th in that group, but he is very different compared to what Kenyatta Jackson or Omari Abor bring as far as the backup guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's going to be a moment this year, and it's going to happen probably frequently, where Caden Curry gets in the game and makes plays happen, because that's what he does. But you look at him, he just looks like he's got that weight that we talked about all offseason. Like, he's now comfortable in it. You can see he looks pretty much like what a defensive end at Ohio State is supposed to look like. And I think you're going to see a John Simon type career still from here for him. And I just don't want people I don't want people to forget him. Okay. And I really do, as Jack Sawyer, because we don't know from a conditioning standpoint how much he's going to be able to hold up as far as playing those 40, 50 snaps like you talked about with Michael Hall. Like, Jack's not had to do that. So is he going to be able to do that at his 275 pounds?
Right. Or
is Caden going to get a lot of opportunities to spell him? And I think that he will be a bigger part of this defense than we've discussed recently. So I own a lot of Caden Curry stock, obviously.
You might own all of it.
I'm holding, but I want people to remember that it's there,
yeah.
and it's going to be worth more in the upcoming
And they should
future.
buy it from you.
They should buy it from me. I will sell it to you.
Because he controls the market,
That's right.
which is important.
Yeah.
I am buying stock in Cade Stover wearing Block O this year for Ohio State.
Oh, that's a nice change-up.
Yeah. I don't know. Tommy Eichenberg could wear it. I don't think he wants that attention, that spotlight on
Does
him.
Cade?
Well, yes and no. I think that Cade wants to be the heartbeat of this team, the leader. Because last year, when he has to answer questions after losing the game in December about the toughness of the team, that was a personal affront to him and the way he lives his entire life. So if he wasn't the de facto number 1 captain on that team last year, which he was very important, but I don't think the primary focal point of the leadership, I don't think he wants to ever have to answer a question about the toughness of Ohio State again. We know that how important his position is, the way he plays it, the mentality, the work ethic, the Iron Buckeye, that he grew up in the state. And it's not even going to be that hard to remove the middle piece of the 8, and it'll still look pretty
You just
natural.
put a red marker
Just
on
cut
it.
that off.
So
Yeah.
I think he's got to be it. And I don't – Tommy is close.
His last name is Stove, like Block Stover.
They can put it. They can enlarge it in the middle.
Yeah,
There you go.
just do it on the back.
I really, if it's not him, I will be stunned.
Are we
Who are,
putting
the
odds?
other, who are the other candidates? So the other
Xavier
candidates
Johnson,
are Xavier
probably
Johnson,
one.
Tommy
Tommy
Eichenberg.
Yeah.
I think Court Williams might be a candidate.
Xavier, Court, Lathan. There's a couple other guys out there, but
I don't think
JT?
I don't think based on the criteria that you have, like it has to be, in my opinion, based on in my understanding, I guess, it needs to be a senior. They got to be on the captain's list. They have to have had that role for multiple seasons. It helps if you've got. Now, this Cam Babb was not from the state of Ohio, but I think that was the way they sort of originally envisioned it, is that you understand what it means to be wearing the scarlet and gray. Jonathan Cooper, I think, was a perfect embodiment of that for the first go around. And I know that we could probably come up with other options, but if Cade doesn't embody that, I don't know what they're doing.
I'm with it.
Yeah, it's a good buy. I think it's a good buy. Is it too early to be down on right tackle?
Nope.
Part of me feels like I'm basing it off of one practice, and now they are, 6 into this, or 5 into this, I guess. I don't know. I hope to show up to the first day of camp to feel a little more confident about what was going on there, and I think it's probably fine that the position did not look great on that particular day. And part of me wants to save this for when we actually get to watch more practice later in the week on Friday to see how that goes.
But today's stock watch
when
day.
They're full pads. But today is stock watch day, so I'm held to it. I am slightly
Sorry,
down.
America.
I'm slightly down. I don't want to be down in a way that alarms people, but I think that maybe they're a little farther behind finding out the right guy at that position than I thought they would be.
Do you think you would have felt differently if you had just seen not Zen with the first unit? And I don't mean that as a slight, but we saw what that looked like throughout spring. And if they'd gone out and had Tegra or Josh Simmons out there, I'm well, they must have seen something different over the course of the summer that they really like.
Yeah, maybe. And that's less about the player itself and more about how just what we saw matched up with what had been being set up until that point.
Okay.
Which to me suggests a little bit of, we don't know what we have yet. So I think that's it. It's not that I think Zen is a bad player. I think Zen is a developmental offensive lineman who is still trying to figure stuff out, and that's okay because everyone else at the position is in basically the same spot, just that Josh Simmons has played a little more than the others there. So there's a lot of practice left. I'm not concerned they're not going to get it right by the time the Indiana game rolls around. But to Berm's point about the left tackle spot, I actually agree with you. It does feel like that is pretty much settled. And not that I thought right tackle would be settled at this point, but I thought that I would feel stronger about it being fairly close to that point.
You would have hoped it'd be closer to settled, and it feels more open than ever.
Yeah.
And we're in the second week of practice, and that's certainly concerning. And yeah, I agree with that. I'm trying to think of anyone else that I would immediately say stock up or stock down.
Or we've talked about some like Carnell Tate and
I just don't want to talk about him too much.
Yeah,
I'm afraid people will put too high of expectation. But it's clear I think he needs to play. I also am pretty close to feeling like Lathan Ransom. We talked about him a lot on Snap Judgments. The expectations for Lathan Ransom should be an All-American type season at Ohio State. If he's healthy, the physical changes, the way the defense should be able to operate, being more comfortable, understanding the terminology better, feeling like you are locked into your spot, not worrying about coming, anyone else around. Lathan Ransom is going to be on that field for Ohio State. All the other changes that happen at safety, Lathan Ransom's going to be there. That's what you know. And I think that because of that, his stock needs to be back up to where it was last year, middle point of the season, because he will make or break this defense, I think, in a lot of ways. If he has that dip that he had at the end of last year, then I think that the defense will have a dip like it did a year ago, because he was dipping a little bit, but then you had Ronnie Hickman who was off a cliff, and it was not enough to give people confidence. But Lathan Ransom, that confidence is there. The body is where it wants to be. He's healthy. He's locked in. So that's the final guy for me would be Lathan.
All right. Keep an eye on those. I think that's enough. I don't need to throw another one out there. You guys have covered it. That's 8 for 1 week of camp, and we'll probably have a lot more that we can dive into once we get through the end of week 2. Have a viewing period on Friday, which we can't wait for. Ohio State will scrimmage. We'll probably get a good feel for who is where at that point. And then we'll come back and we'll dive into stocks in the middle of next week on a Hump Day edition of the Podcast Daily. Thanks for joining us for this one. That's Bill and Berm. I'm Austin. We'll talk to you later.